Hello, ninth grade. Today we are in your Themes of Literature book. We're on page 48 and we're going to read The Wind is Free. I'm going to read an introduction. This is not in your book, so just listen. Why is a common question we ask when we are asked to do something we do not understand. Many times the question is unanswered for a variety of reasons. In The Wind is Free, Eva has to trust that her mother's requests are to be trusted without knowing the reason why. At the end of the story, her trust is rewarded, and she finds out the answers to her questions. Now I'm reading the little tan box on the top. Eva, a young girl living in Nazi-occupied Czechoslovakia during World War II, is more afraid of the baker's wife than of the German soldiers loitering in the town square. She wants to be courageous like Tommaso, her older brother, but she is dismayed when her mother asks her to go to the village and insult the baker's wife. Why would her mother make such a strange request? Eva, Eva, come. It is time to go to the baker's. Eva was gathering pussy willows down by the brook, and though she answered her mother's call, she did not start up the hill as she knew she should. Yes, yes, mamicha, I come, she said, still filling her apron with the willows. It was a beautiful spring day. The trees were budding, peach trees were in bloom, and violets were at her feet. The brook was bubbling gaily, swollen by the melting snow from the mountains. Eva would have liked to stay all day here in the meadow. She hoped her mother would let her eat lunch out of doors. It was only bread, but perhaps today the baker's wife would give her a coffee cake. Eva liked best the kind with prune jam inside. Mother never made them anymore. Be thankful that we still have bread, she would answer when Eva asked for cake. Try not to think so much about eating, little daughter. Eva, Eva, you must hurry. Come, come. Again her mother's voice sounded, and Eva reluctantly walked up to the house. Her mother was standing in the doorway with a letter in her hand. You are to give this to the baker's wife, she said, and then come straight home with the bread. Oh, mamicha, couldn't Yurka go just for once? Why do you always send me? Eva pleaded. Because you are a big girl, 11 years old, her mother answered, old enough to help your mother. Yurka is too little a boy to go to the village. And Tomoso? Why, Eva, Tomoso must do all the work of the farm now that your father is fighting, and today he has gone on an errand into the mountains. I am afraid of the baker's wife, the little girl said. She always looks cross, and she has a black mole on her chin. Page 49. Marushka is a good woman, silly little one, her mother answered, and very brave. That's more important than a pink chin. I am ashamed of you for being so lazy. And then I hate to go through the square, Eva continued shamefacedly. The German soldiers are there and they laugh at me, and one of them pulled my braids the other day and said, Red cheeks, where are you going? I am sorry, daughter, her mother said with a sigh. Don't answer. Go straight ahead and God protect you. Eva started off slowly. She knew the road to the village well. She had often traveled it with her father. As a little girl, she had gone in the farm wagon pulled by 2 stout black horses, but now for a year they had no horses. The Germans had taken them all, and the pigs too, and the geese that Yurika loved to run after in the court. He had 10 little goslings that he had brought up by hand and loved as his very own. He took them to the pasture, the mother goose quacking behind them. On cold nights, he would put them on an old pillow in his room. When the German soldiers came to carry off the livestock from the farm, he had begged for just 1 gosling to keep for himself, but the men laughed at his tears and said they needed the little geese for gosling pie. Eva thought of the roast goose they always had at Christmas, with dumplings and prunes, and far enough flavored with honey, butter, and ginger, and little tarts thick with poppy seeds. Walking made her hungry. Eva's mouth watered as she thought about all those good things. It was so long since they had any of them, but then she was almost always a little hungry these days. There were 7 roads leading into the town where Eva was going, from 7 villages lying on the little hills round about. She took the one under the linden trees and stopped at the top of the last slope to look down on the square below her. Here the fair used to be held before the war. It always came after the harvest, when the wheat and rye had been cut. Everybody was happy, and people went in their best clothes to see the booths that lined the village green. There was a merry-go-round, and Father let them all ride on it, and afterward each one could choose a cake. She had stood a long time deciding between a gingerbread heart and a candy horse and rider. The horse had won because he had a long yellow sugar ice tail. Yurka took a white sugar goose, but Tomoso did not ask for anything to eat. He wanted a wooden flute, and he played checks there were on a time all the way home. Today there were only soldiers in the square. A great crowd of them stood about the bakery, and Eva could not push her way through the door. No one moved for her until at last the soldier who had teased her the week before called out, "Hello, here is Red Cheeks. What are you doing all by your pretty self?" "Mother has sent me for bread," the little girl answered timidly, "but I can't get in." "I'll get you in," he said, giving the man in front a push, "and then perhaps you'll tell me where the town hall is." Eva explained, and the soldier shoved her up to the counter, laughing as he knocked people out the way. He was a German from Prague, and he spoke Czech very well. When Eva came out of the store, he gave her some chocolate and walked a little way with her on the road. He asked her how many brothers and sisters she had, and if there were many children in her village, and just where they played. Before Eva thought, she had told him of the meadow by the brook, their meeting place, and how well Stepan, their neighbor, led the singing, and how at Whitsuntide, Tomoso was the leader of all the boys in the Rite of the Kings. "He goes on a big white horse, all covered with bells and flowers," his sister said proudly, "with his hands tied to the saddle, all through the town, and he must hold a rose in his mouth every moment. He is the best rider in town." "But there aren't any more horses. We can't have ride this year." "What is it for?" asked the man. "Is it a sport? Do the boys fight at the end?" "Oh, no," answered Eva. "They collect baskets of food for the poor." "How far off is the big meadow?" he inquired. "That gathering place where you have games. Couldn't you take me to it?" "Oh, no, no," cried the little girl. "I am late now. Please don't keep me." Well, don't run away, Red Cheeks," the soldier said. "I only wanted you to earn another piece of chocolate. Just one more question. What is the favorite game?" "The wind is free," Eva called back over her shoulder. The soldier had spoken kindly, but she knew that she had talked too much. She had forgotten the warning. Don't answer. The soldier turned away, murmuring, "The wind is free," a strange game for children. When Eva reached home and told her mother that she had talked with the German soldier, she was surprised at her mother's tears. Mamicha seldom cried, and now she was shaking with sobs and anger. "Sit down, little daughter," she said at last, pointing to the stool beside the fire, "and listen well to what I say. The Germans have always been our enemies. They have forced their way into our country, which does not belong to them. You must have nothing to do with them. That man you met may have been kind to you, but he is planning something terrible for our village, I am sure. Never, never speak to him again." And then she whispered, drawing Eva close to her, "You didn't say anything about Tomoso's going into the mountains sometimes, following the goat tracks?" "No, Mamicha, no," her daughter answered. "I just told him about the Rite of the Kings." Tomoso was late that night getting back from his errand in the mountains and too tired to talk. Eva wanted to tell him about her experience in the village, but he lay down before the fire with his shepherd's cloak thrown over him and fell fast asleep. He was off again early in the morning, and his mother would not say when he would return. Eva missed her big brother very much, for they had always planned together for the spring festival, Judica, when children of Czechoslovakia celebrate the passing of winter. As soon as forget-me-nots blossom and pussy willows grow fat and fuzzy, boys and girls begin to talk of throwing Marana into the brook. She is a pretend figure of Old Woman Winter, made out of sackcloth stuffed with straw, crowned with a white willow painted like a face. In other words, she is a lady scarecrow. Usually, Tomoso stuffed the figure after his mother had sewed the pieces of sacking together, and he was proud of its giant legs and fat bulging arms. Now this spring, he was away half the time, and Mother was too busy writing to make a Morana. "Perhaps your grandmother will come," she said, to console Eva. "She will fix up Old Woman Winter for you." And she did come. She was small and plump, with bright blue eyes and white curls, and she always wore a flowered apron. Eva thought her grandmother was wonderful. She could knit with her eyes shut, make cakes out of almost nothing, and sing all the old Czech songs. This time she brought Tomoso and Yurka new socks, and Eva a wooden doll, and tarts for them all. She started at once to make a Morana, and all the neighbors' children came in to watch her work. Stuffing the figure was soon done, but grandmother took great pains with the clothes for Old Woman Winter. Her dress was dark and heavy. She wore torn black stockings, red mittens full of holes, and a bonnet of chicken feathers. On her back was a bag full of rubbish. The ills of winter, grandmother said. Colds, chilblains, rheumatism, and frozen ears. The Marana's face frowned, and a dirty handkerchief was stuck into her large red nose. Mounted on a tall pole, she was a terrifying sight. Stepan was to lead the procession to the brook. He was a choir master too, and made everybody practice the spring song before they started off. St. George comes, takes out his keys, we know, unlocks the earth that flowers and trees might grow. The girls all wore red handkerchiefs over their heads and carried, each one a tiny tree decorated with ribbons. They looked like a line of poppies as they left the door, and grandmother called out, "Goodbye, my field flowers." Stepan walked slowly as the pole was rather heavy. They had scarcely reached the meadow when Tomoso caught up with them, breathless from a run down the mountain, and Stepan handed over his burden to the bigger boy, and himself struck up the tune again. Eva felt with Tomoso on hand the spring festival must be a success. They advanced gaily, the ribbons waving, the whole band singing, and everybody smiling, except the Marana. They were nearing the brook when suddenly a soldier stepped from behind each tree that bordered the meadow. They were completely surrounded. A loud voice cried out, "Halt!" And the children stood absolutely still. An officer came up to Tomoso and Stepan and said, roughly, "What do you mean by this? Making a laughingstock of our Führer?" He snatched the pole as he spoke. "It's only old woman Winter," said Tomoso. "We're throwing her into the brook because spring is here." "What tomfoolery!" exclaimed the officer, tearing off the Marana's bonnet and fumbling with the bag. "There must be papers here." Nothing fell out but potato parings and a rotten apple that spattered the soldier's trousers. His face grew angry, and he said crossly to a comrade whom Eva recognized as the man who called her Red Cheeks, "Lieutenant, you have deceived us. You promised information, and we find only this cursed scarecrow." The two men consulted for a moment, and Eva heard the lieutenant whisper, "They have other games." He then came forward and said, "The colonel wants to know about all your sports. You must answer promptly and not hide anything, or it will be worse for you. What is the ride of the kings that I have heard about? Show us how you play that." "Excuse me, sir," said Tomoso, "but that takes horses, white horses, and there aren't any more." "Oh-ho!" sneered the colonel. "No horses. You want an army, don't you? Right here under our noses, and kings in this miserable little village. That's what you call your generals, I suppose. What are their names, these fine fellows that can only ride on white horses?" Stepan answered this time. "Gaspar, Melchior, and—" He started, but the colonel interrupted him. The footnote tells us that Gaspar, Melchior, and Balthasar refer to the traditional names of the wise men who sought Jesus at his birth. "You lie! You lie! Those aren't Czech generals. You know you are playing at war. Don't try to fool me." Then he turned to the lieutenant. "Give them one more chance. I can't waste my time like this." The lieutenant looked very uncomfortable and mumbled, "You don't need generals for a war game. These are concentration camps and prisons. Perhaps the boys play at that." And out loud, fixing his eyes on Eva, he said, "Who can tell me about the wind is free?" She was too frightened to speak and marveled at Tomoso, who answered calmly, "That is a new game that we have made up since the war, and it takes a lot of children. We haven't enough boys to do it today." "Not enough," repeated the colonel angrily. "I've had enough of you and your crazy games. A night in the guardhouse will show you who's free around here. Seize that boy." He pointed at Tomoso, and two soldiers caught him by the shoulders and marched him off between them. The whole company of Germans followed them out the meadow. As soon as the last uniform was out of sight, the children ran for home. Eva burst in upon her grandmother, sobbing and shaking with fright. She was so excited that she could scarcely tell her story. It came out bit by bit with a wail at the end. "Oh, Starenka, what will they do to Tomoso?" "I can't tell," her grandmother answered, "but whatever they do, he will be brave." "But mother," sobbed Eva, "what will she do without Tomoso to help?" "Your mother has gone away for a little," her grandmother said gravely. "We won't have to tell her right away. She left a message for you, something she wants you to do, but we won't talk about it until you are rested." Grandmother put Eva into her own big feather bed with the painted flowers on the footboard and sang her to sleep. The little girl lay quiet under the blue and red quilt for an hour, and grandmother sat by her side until she woke up. Then she brought the child a bowl of farina, cooked with honey. This was to be a surprise for Sunday, she explained, but I think you need it now. It's the last bit of honey in the valley. Page 52. When Eva had eaten every bit of the sweet dish and even licked the spoon, her grandmother said, "Little granddaughter, you were proud of your brother today, weren't you? He was brave in front of those cruel soldiers." "Yes, grandmother, very brave. He was the true Czech. They all have courage, and now you have a chance to be like him. You want to be like him, don't you?" "Yes," faltered Eva, "but oh, what is it I must do?" "It is something hard," was the answer, "but you can do it. Your mother left word for you to go to the bakery with the last loaf of bread you got there. Give it back to the baker's wife and say, 'The bread is sour.'" "Oh, grandmother, I can't," whimpered Eva. "She will be so angry and she will scold me. I am afraid of her anyway." "And she will perhaps scold you," grandmother replied. "I'm sure she won't hurt you, though." "But the bread was never sour before, and if it is now, we could give crumbs to the birds," protested Eva. "Why must I say that?" "Don't ask why," her grandmother answered. "A soldier doesn't ask questions. He obeys orders without knowing why, and that's what you must do. Perhaps sometime I can explain it to you." Her grandmother sighed as she spoke, and then added, "And then you will be glad that you helped your country. It is very important." Eva got up slowly from the bed and went into the kitchen for the loaf of bread. As she started to leave the cottage, her grandmother put Tomoso's shepherd's coat about her little shoulders and said softly, "Remember Tomoso." Eva had always thought the road to the village rather long, but today the linden trees flew past her as if they were running a race. In vain she walked slowly. The distance slipped away with terrible speed. There was fear in her heart, and the loaf of bread grew heavier and heavier as she mounted the last hill. She looked down on the square from this height. All its buildings spread out clearly before her, and thought sadly of her brother as her eyes fell on the guardhouse before the town hall. What was he doing? Had the Germans beaten him? Would they keep him a prisoner until the end of the war? The green was full of soldiers, as on her last visit, and crowds of them stood in front of every shop. She lingered as long as she dared, and then with a desperate plunge ran down the slope, pushed through the throng in the square, and presented herself before the bakery counter. The terrifying baker's wife was standing behind it. Eva gulped hard, and putting the package down in front of her, gasped out, "The bread is sour." The woman burst into a cry of rage. "My bread? Sour? Never!" and threw the loaf back in Eva's face. It struck her squarely in the mouth, and blood spurted from her lip. The little girl pulled her cloak about her head and rushed out of the shop, tears of pain streaming down her cheeks. A soldier who had seen the encounter slouched after her and tried to stop her. "Did she hurt you?" he asked. "Never mind, we're going to fix the baker and his wife." He pulled her braids, but she wrenched herself free and sped on toward the path through the woods. She ran until she was deep among the linden trees. When she reached home, grandmother did not seem surprised that the baker's wife had struck her. She bathed Eva's lip and called her a brave girl, so Eva went to bed relieved and happy. The next day was very long. There was no way of finding out about Tomoso. Grandmother and Eva talked about him all the morning, and little Yurika kept running to see if he was in sight on the road. Finally, grandmother said they must do some work, and it would make the time pass more quickly. They took their chairs out under the peach tree, and Eva struggled with a cross-stitch pattern on a square of linen. She was outlining the first design every Czechoslovakian child learns to draw, the little apple. The seeds, the core, the stem, all show as if the fruit had been cut in halves, and there was a tiny flower at the top. While she worked, grandmother knitted and told the story of the cock and the hen. Late in the afternoon, Tomoso appeared. His arm was in a sling, and he walked as if he were terribly tired. He was famished, for he had had nothing to eat for 24 hours. Grandmother gave him supper at once, and Eva bathed his face and hands. Then he could answer questions. "What did the soldiers do to you? Was it terrible in the guardhouse? How did you get away?" And many more. "I'd be there yet, but the regiment was ordered on to Prague," Tomoso said. "They didn't leave any guards, and somebody threw my rope up to one of the broken windows, and we all slid down." "And your arm?" They wrenched my arm because I wouldn't say that we had Czech generals in our games, Tomoso said. They thought the wind is free told of prisoners being released from a concentration camp. And when I acted it out for them, the colonel said we Czech children were crazy. We didn't even know enough to play at war games like the German kids. Oh, Tomoso, cried Eva. I told that German soldier about the right of the kings and the wind. Wasn't it terrible? How could you know that they were trying to find out things by our games? Asked grandmother. It was a regular plot, answered Tomoso. What they wanted most to know was where the underground paper was published. Did they find out? Asked grandmother quickly. Yes, the cellar of the bakery. They fired the bakery last night, but somebody warned the baker and his wife, and they escaped. Why, grandmother, exclaimed Eva. Was that why? Yes, child, her grandmother answered. The bread is sour. That was the word of warning for them. Your mother sent it from the mountains. Mother? How did mother know? Asked Tomoso. Those letters she sent to the bakery, were they? Yes, for the press, his grandmother answered. And Eva took the message late yesterday. Those were insulting words. The bread is sour. It's the worst thing you can say to a baker. Of course, the baker's wife acted as if she were outraged. She threw a loaf of bread in Eva's face. See that swollen lip? She only pretended to be angry, said Eva slowly. Oh, grandmother, I wasn't in any danger, so perhaps I wasn't really brave. I wanted to be as brave as Tomoso. And whoever says you weren't, cried her brother, saluting her with his left hand. I'll give him a black eye. Now, take out a clean sheet of paper and answer the Think It Through questions on page 53. See you in class.